higher up.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August zoning board meeting. We have several cases tonight, and we'll be just hearing only variances tonight. So what I will do is I'll call up the cases individually and ask that you testify up here with the case, and you'll be asked to confine your testimony to about 15 minutes. And then I'll ask for anyone who wants to speak in favor of the application, followed by anyone who wants to speak in opposition to the application. I'll then ask for any additional information or comments from our code administrator. And then if there's any factual rebuttal that we need to hear, I'll seek those from the applicant. Each hearing will then be closed after the hearing, and we'll decide the case before we proceed to the next one. We have a request, case 4718, Michael and Michelle Gray, request that this case be recessed.
Yes, hello, my name is Laura Hartz.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. So I'm here on behalf of Michael and Michelle Gray, residents of 5 Portsmouth Street, and I'm requesting a recess from this hearing. We just learned yesterday that the city surveyor has some questions about the survey on which the plan is based, so we'd like to address the questions before we seek your approval for the variances.
I move to recess.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Case has been recessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the record, the case is recessed till September 5th
Yes.
at 7:00 p.m. And there may not be, generally we do not send out any additional notices for a recessed case. It is declared here to be reheard and reopened.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a conflict with our next case, so Mr. Jim, you'll sit in, Mr. Marshall will sit in. So it's case 40-18 Capital Commons LLC. This was recessed from July 11th hearing. Applicant wishes to install 330 feet, 0.75 feet wall sign between 4th and 5th floor on the east side of the building. Requests the following variances. 1, to Article 28.6.7, signs prohibited to permit a wall sign to be located above the sill of the second floor window and greater than 25 feet above grade where such signs are not permitted. 2, to Article 28-6-9B1B, permitted building signs to permit a new building 330-foot sign, square foot sign for a use located on a property located at 11 South Main Street in a CBP Central Business Performance District.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jamie Simchak. I'm the project manager and one of the owners of Capital Commons and the Hotel Concord. Hopefully some of you are aware, but if not, the Hotel Concord is coming in at 11 South Main Street. We were going to have 21 rooms on the fourth floor and 17 rooms on the 6th floor. The 4th floor is opening in later this month, hopefully.
Just a second, please. You're a bit hasty. If you all swear to tell the truth.
Oh, yeah,
nothing but
sorry.
the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. And so we're really excited about it. We're here to request a proposed sign on the east side of the building, the I-93 side of the building, to say the Hotel Concord, bold letters in the font of our logo. It's as you said, it's a 300 square foot sign, and it's between the 4th and 5th floors. As you mentioned, we're seeking 2 variances on the sign height and the sign area. The hardship we see is that the parking garage is currently blocking the 2nd floor on that side of the building. And there's no space for a freestanding sign. We've also noted that other businesses, including some hotels in Concord, in a number of different zoning districts, have been granted relief to the max sign height and area. And I'm going to turn it over to Anthony from SMP to give you a little bit more information.
Good evening, all. Anthony Mento, SMP Architecture. So as Jamie said, and I'm going to reiterate just a little bit, we are requesting you to grant these variances based on some unusual conditions of the lot and the unusual physical conditions with the city's parking garage that make it very difficult, if not impossible, to meet the regulations. First, the Capitol Commons building is just one piece of a larger condo complex that includes the city's parking garage, so it's really one large entity. This special condition of the condo lot physically blocks off access to the back of the Capitol Commons building from the second floor down. So effectively, we only have a certain number of levels above the parking garage to utilize. We're respectfully requesting forgiveness to Article 2867 based on this unique condition. These particular conditions are not generally applied to the other structures in the neighborhood, so we're hoping to locate our sign on the 5th floor above those windows there. In addition, because of the special sloping topography of the property that includes the parking structure, which will not allow the sign to be clearly visible without the variances that we seek, both from Storrs Street and further east towards the interstate, we are requesting that the variance to Article 2869 for the additional sign allotment that is we see as necessary and reasonable. Looking at the project, we don't see that these variances will be injurious to the neighborhood or abutters or detrimental to public safety. We think that the variances that we're requesting are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the regulations. The design, as shown, is tasteful. It supports the city's development plan, which we believe will increase awareness of the Main Street and kind of signify that the city is open for business. We have visited the architectural design review. We came with a much more elaborate and complicated signage plan, which rightfully so, I think they guided us to reduce the number of signs and the size of the signs and the locations of the signs. What we're showing today is not exactly as recommended, but they wanted it in this location on the building, except they were recommending that it be justified one way, and we felt visually and architecturally centered on the building was preferable. So with us this evening is Mike from Sundance Signs, who's going to be constructing it. If you have any questions about how the sign will be built, it is an internally illuminated sign, blocked off from the edges as the architectural design review suggested.
So standard channel letter construction, translucent white face with LED lighting on the inside. It's a 5-inch can, so the sides are completely blacked out. The only lighting is coming directly out through the face. You get a small amount of ambient light that comes from that, but it's more of a subtle projection of light than it is a surrounding area of light. Do you have anything?
The only thing I'd like to say, I'm Michael Simchick, and usually I'm only allowed to talk about subjective items, and so that's what I'm going to talk about right now. As I think most of you know, Capitol Commons has been around for about 10 years, and we've tried to be very supportive of that end of Main Street. We've tried to be very supportive of additional commerce within Concord. One of the things that I always think about, and I think someone mentioned it, maybe Anthony or whatever, Concord being open for business. I think there are 60 to 90,000 cars a day, and I know this is not at the purview potentially of this committee, but 60 to 90,000 cars a day. If we were even able to attract, or if signage on 93 was even able to attract 0.5% of that a day, that would be another 300 to 450 cars a day, people coming into Concord. And my personal feeling is that even though we own the hotel as well, and it is a distinct business, I think it's very key to know that this is not as if a law firm or a investment firm is just advertising for their customers. This is a hotel that brings in numerous people into Concord. Those people eat, those people go to entertainment, those people may be introduced to Concord by what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And while it should benefit us, and we certainly hope it will, if we pick up 300 to 450 cars a day, again, that's only half of 1%. If that comes into Concord every day, unfortunately, we don't have a 300 to 450 room hotel. So we feel that in addition to trying to do our best as we should as business people, we also want to do the best for where we live and where we reside, which is Concord. And I hope that our reputation and what we've done over the past few years speaks well for itself in terms of us wanting to do things in that fashion. So again, I'm very respectful of time, very respectful of all of your input, and we as a group would love to hear your questions and see if we can respond to them. Thank you.
Questions from members of the board?
Questions for Craig, Code Enforcement Officer. So, Article 2869, there's no, this is not, so the second variance is to permit a sign in an area that's not permitted, is that correct? There must be signage on this building already, on Main Street?
Correct, yes. They had a previous variance to permit multiple building signs on the South Main Street side frontage of the building to allow signage for uses that were on the upper floors of the building where such signage would not otherwise be permitted.
And that was approved and that's done?
Correct.
Okay. So the issue here is there's no permitted sign on this side of the building? Is that what I mean, the first variance is, it should be on the 5th floor instead of the 2nd floor. I see the difference there.
Well, again, signage generally for a use is allowed at the street level of a building. Frontage is determined by the streetscape, you know, the side of the building the street is on. There is a provision for signage on an upper level portion of the building. It's a conditional use permit for those buildings that might have a single occupant, such as, you know, Holiday Inn down the road. But yeah, I mean, at that level, no, there would be no provision to allow signage on that building.
But I think a related question is the issue with when they say there's no more signage available because all the allowed signage has been used up, plus an additional signage and a previous variance was allowed for that building by other tenants.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment? Sure. So we currently have 112 and a half square feet of signage. We're allotted 150, and then this is a 330 additional square feet.
So you're not maxed out on your allotment, but this would
put us over.
This would exceed, okay.
Oh, so you could make the small signer and not have to get that second variance?
You wouldn't be able to see it.
But, right. Putting aesthetics aside,
I mean, we have
you could
just under 40 square feet additional.
40. Okay, got it.
Additional.
Remaining.
Remaining, okay.
But they would be allowed the signs on both sides.
Right, you're
Within the
permitted
square
3
footage
signs
allotments.
per frontage, and the signs can be separated on all sides of the building. Or you could dedicate the entire signage package to one side of the building if you so choose.
But frontage would, even like on a building like this that takes up basically a block, or not an entire block, but it has frontage and kind of you only get the frontage for Main Street, right?
Well, there's only frontage on Main Street. This building back here is the garage, so that is not legitimate frontage for square footage for signage.
That's right.
Just had a couple questions. The sign's internally illuminated. It's going to be on all night. You can turn it off. What are the?
It hasn't been discussed. That would be the hope, but many signs in the past I know are on time clocks that shut down at a certain hour.
Okay. And I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but the parking garage in front, that's owned by the city, correct?
That's correct. That's
Great.
part of the condo project that I referenced.
And there's no signage on it? There's a parking symbol over the,
There may be
Yeah.
something,
But nothing-
wayfinding type signage, yes.
yeah, okay, thanks.
We did ask city staff at one time if the city would accept the fact that the Store Street side of the building is not accessible, if we could include that into our signage allotment. There was also an alley that this building was adjacent to that was defunct and is now the access to Red River Theater down there. So we were wondering if that area could be utilized as seen as frontage. So, so that's kind of where we're at, and we're trying to kind of get a sign that is visible from the east side of the city.
Point of clarification about the condo association that Anthony alluded to. When this building was built, we created that was the old Sears block from those of you who've seen it before. We created, in conjunction with the city, what we would call a dirt condominium. And so the property owned by Capital Commons LLC is the footprint under our building. And the city owns the rest. And Craig, maybe you can comment if I'm making any errors here, but I think we at Capital Commons, I think we have a 1/3 interest, if you will, in that condo association that represents the garage and the building together.
Question, the drawing that we have here, is that to scale? The scale?
Yes.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that's basically the size it would look at.
Correct. That is a rendering, yes.
Another quick question. Do you happen to know if the Holiday Inn sign is lit?
It is.
It is.
And is it lit all the time, do you know? Do we know, Craig?
I believe it is, yes. That was installed, I want to say, probably in the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so these were some of the things we looked at, and the city was very helpful in helping provide us with the files. But for your information, if I got this right, the Holiday Inn, which is in the urban commercial district, has 389 square feet of permitted signage, with which is well over the allotment for that zoning district. And there are a couple other hotels in other zoning districts that are well over their allotment. Their allowance, max allowance, and they were permitted more.
And Craig, on lighting in that district, there's no time stipulation.
No,
So it'd be on as long as the business is open, basically.
yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Please step forward. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Tom Ballin, and I'm the owner of the Concord Antiques Gallery in downtown Concord. I'm here to speak in favor of said sign, quite honestly, because 6 months' time, I may be here asking for a similar concession. I think anything, again, that brings people to downtown Concord, and I'm somewhat favored to signs that actually have the word Concord in it, which kind of bring people in. It's good for business, good for us. I think it sounds quite large. I haven't actually seen the pictures of the sign, but that's my support for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Ballin? Thank you very much. Anyone else who wants to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who wants to speak in opposition to the application? Craig?
Well, I do have a couple comments to make. There are a number of signs for various hotels along the I-93 corridor. The majority of those, with the exception of the Holiday Inn, are on property that's directly adjacent to the highway. I couldn't give you an inventory of what variances granted, but a quick review of my memory says that there were a couple height variances. Perhaps there was a secondary sign allowed on the street side as opposed to the highway side too. One of the key things when considering variances of this nature is to look at the character of the downtown and to ask yourselves, is this signage going to change the character of the downtown Concord, and has this happened before? One of the comments too was this is not a use such as an attorney's office or a professional office, but we cannot discriminate based on the use when it comes to granting permits, granting relief. It doesn't matter if it's a hotel or if it's an attorney. They all have to be looked at with the same type of view. And the Supreme Court has ruled on that before, that we can't discriminate based on a use.
Even against attorneys.
Even against attorneys. You are equal in everybody's eyes.
Finally.
Does Capital Comments wish to offer any rebuttal to what they heard from Mr. Walker? Okay, seeing none, then I declare the hearing closed and open for discussion.
Well,
Andrew.
should I say anything? I think the first one makes, quite a bit of sense just because the garage is there. So, if they had to put it less than 25 feet under, I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. If they put on the other side, well, it's kind of cluttered over there anyway, I think, and this side makes sense for the highway traffic, so that seems like a logical place to want to put it. So I mean, the first one, I don't have, it seems fine to me, makes sense to me. It's a unique aspect. The size of it, my sense is that it's tricky because, right, they don't have any signage left because all the tenants have used it. It's one of the largest buildings probably in Concord. So of course they have a lot of tenants who want a lot of signage, and it seems somewhat of the value is judgment as to how much signage a big building like that should really get above and beyond. And there comes a limit. If you go to New York City, obviously you have a huge skyscraper. Not everyone tenant in there is going to be able to get a lot of signage. So I guess my sense is I don't have a problem giving them more. I just don't know exactly what the cutoff should be. Because if this was the only sign for the building, I think if I heard right, they would have enough, right? It's just that, so those are my thoughts.
Well, actually, let me clarify that. The maximum square footage allowed for building signage per frontage in the CBP district is 150 square feet.
So that's what they would get.
That would be the maximum allowed if they had 150 feet of frontage on a street. Then they would not be able to exceed that.
So
So
wherever,
they'd still need a variance.
right, wherever the sign was.
So they're twice as much as even if there is no other signage on the building right now.
At least, yes.
Yeah, I guess my feel, to me, the argument for hardship is that the height and where it is, number one here, there is a hardship because of the building in front. But number two is the one that I'm wrestling with a little bit. The hardship being that they feel a reasonable use would be to have a sign on this side of the building. And if you're going to have a sign on the interstate side of the building, it needs, if it's there for visibility from I-93 or Store Street, it needs to be a certain size. You couldn't do a 40 square foot sign and it would have no value. And I kind of think that I think there is a value, and I guess my thinking, Craig, is a little different than what you said about the tenant. it seems to me that a hotel, a reasonable use for a hotel is to have signage visible to the public. And I look at the Holiday Inn as a perfect example. I think it benefits the business. So I'm inclined to go along with both variances. The first one being there's a hardship that they're not able to do adequate signing on the east side of the building, and then the first case is they really can't put it on the second floor because it'd be blocked. So I'd be inclined to approve the variance for those reasons.
Laura? Jim?
Okay. I agree with what's been said before about the first variance. You can't, I mean, you could put it on the second floor, but no one would see it. It doesn't make any sense. And they don't control the parking garage. If that was their building, then they could put it on that building, but that's the city, so that doesn't work. For the size, I do agree that people that are going to a hotel are looking. They're new to a community. They're visitors. They don't know where they're going. And if you've seen on Main Street the signage, even the signage for the hotel, which is there, plus all their other tenants, is like the size of 2 pieces of paper. It's a little shingle sign hanging out there. So it is, even though it's very tasteful and beautiful, that's not going to help anybody find a hotel that has never been there before. And I will say, I'm not going to point anything out, but just because other hotels have other signage, that's not the best argument, because this one is very tastefully done. It fits with the downtown. I'm glad that Design Review gave you some guidance, because it does look very nice. It looks like it'll fit. It looks like it belongs there. And the size doesn't bother me because, again, it is a large building. You don't want it to look ridiculous up on the building. You want it to look like it fits and it was part of it, not an afterthought. So I do feel they've met their criteria for hardship based on the fact there's a garage that they do not control in front of the building, as well as the square footage for the signage just really doesn't fit the size of the building and the multiple uses in it. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what's been discussed. The first one is easy because the garage is in front of it. The size of the sign is pretty big, but it's a big building. I guess I see it more similar to what we did with the Rowley Agency, so that sign could be seen from 393, more so than the Holiday Inn. So I'm inclined to support it. I just think we want to be careful as take into account the hardship issues created by the building in front, should any other Store Street properties start getting concerned that they want to be able to have signage for the highway.
Any other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant the variances for the reasons previously stated.
I think I'd ask that they be split.
Oh, split, okay. Then I make a motion to grant a variance from Article 2867 for the reason that there is the parking garage in front of the building.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, I will make a motion to
You're on a roll,
grant
Laura.
a variance for Article 2869B1B for the reasons stated, that there's multiple tenants in the building, the square footage allotment that they're asking for fits in size and scale to the building.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think we should point out that one of the criteria is not hurting property values in the area and consistent with the area. And when you look at the other other hotel and the other signage, I think it meets those criteria as well.
And I guess I'm just getting a little caught up partially on what Craig said about even the use, although I do think it's a really nice looking sign and that it makes more sense for a hotel than a law office, but I don't think it's the zoning board that we're best suited to make basically a value judgment as to what size sign can go on a large building on Main Street, because there's other large buildings there, and that seems like more of a larger policy level issue that someone should decide, not a variance level issue. That's my thought.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
Okay.
Papers back. Help you out.
I guess this is here.
Well, that cleared out.
Yeah.
There you go. Nick, gentlemen, ladies,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
enjoy your
Good to
evening.
see you.
Have a good night.
and watch it.
I'll go home and watch on TV.
Yeah, right.
If it's raining, Craig's offered valet parking. Pick up your car for you.
What do you drive? Just give me your keys.
All right, our next case tonight is 43-18, Roger and Marion Clattenburg. This was recessed from July 11th hearing. Applicant requests a variance to Article 28-2-2 zoning district established, Section B3, the single-family residential district, to subdivide a 1.8-acre lot from a 14.43-acre lot intended for a single-family dwelling without extending municipal services, water and sewer services to the newly created lot for property located at 15 Frost Road in an RS residential single-family. Note, a portion of the southeast corner of the proposed lot is within the RO residential open space district. All right, let me just get this out. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name.
Art Siciliano. I'm representing Roger and Marion Clattenburg.
Right, we heard this case, we had a recess. Do we need to open that?
Well, you need to reopen the case, yes.
Somebody want to make a motion?
We have to move I move to reopen.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Because we have two new members, we ask you to just present all the information again. These are the folks who didn't hear the case last
So
month.
basically, the Clattenburgs own 14.43 acres on the corner of Curtisville Road and Frost Road, and they wish to subdivide off a 1.8-acre lot for their grandson. And we've been in front of the planning board, and they've reviewed the plans. So it's a 1.8-acre lot. We planned on doing on-site well and septic, mainly because there's no sewer and water. It's pretty far away, so. But the requirement is in this zone that we hook up to those services. So I think we determined it's around 2,300 feet away from this lot. So they chose to do the on-site water and sewer. Basically, that's about it. That's about all I can say about it. We're pretty far from it. It's not going to, this type of a variance is not going to diminish any values in the neighborhood there. So.
Rick, can you reduce that a little bit, and also can you show us where the water and sewer facilities end? I know we did that last time.
Actually, can I just,
Yeah. We're going to do a little noise abatement. Yeah.
well, you can see up on the map there, the property. It's the upper corner of the property there at the top of the screen is where they're proposing to put, subdivide a single lot off. There is water up here on Dominique Drive, sewer, and
What about across the street?
well, yeah, on the street itself, sewer is down at this location here, as is water, which connects to the school areas there. The area is zoned RS, residential single family. I'll reserve the rest of my comments for when you ask me to speak.
Wait, let me ask you, what about the properties across the street from this whole property, this whole lot?
Those are actually zoned separately if I'm... Oops, there we go.
It's RM.
So this is the RS zone here, RM zone over there. RM zone would require, extension of water and sewer if they were doing a development or a subdivision.
So it's just that the RO at the very top portion would not, but that's just a really small.
Just
portion of
that little
lot.
corner there, correct. Connection to water and sewer is required for an RS. And, well, I'll just explain here rather than waiting. Again, when this was zoned, it was at a time that there was a significant development potential of this type of a standard residential single-family development. This is prime developable land. If they were ever to carve it up into smaller individual lots and run streets through, we would be expecting that they would be able to provide, or would have to provide water and sewer to it. So.
And what's the city's rationale in that requirement that it's just too inefficient? It's too inefficient for that many properties to all have their own.
Correct. I mean, we scale the size of the lots based on what types of services are available. In the RO district, where services are not expected to be available and are not provided, we require a 2-acre lot size. And in the RM district, where you have both types, there's some lots that water sewer is available, but where it's not, it's a 40,000 square foot lot size. In the areas where you do have water and sewer, it starts at 12,500. So you can get a much better yield for lots because you have to be able to provide your septic system, your wells, and such like that. So without a larger lot area, you can't provide that stuff. Or if you have a septic failure on a smaller lot, there's no opportunity perhaps to replace it. So yes, the density is based on the availability of services.
So the idea is that if they only divided this into one extra lot and only put one house on it, that would really be underutilizing the density that it's zoned for. And
well, that's the question before the board tonight, and that's why they're here.
Oh, okay. Don't answer that. Okay.
If you wish to continue, sorry for the interruption. We wanted a clarification.
Well, again, they want to subdivide a lot off for their grandson. They do not want to hook up to the services that are required, and therefore they would like to get the variance. The lot we provided has ample room for well and septic, and it'd be kind of a hardship for them to run at the expense to get it down there. Those services.
Is there's one home presently on the lot, and
there is up on Frost Road, yes.
That's 15 Frost. So could they can't put the grandson's house off in the RO portion up there. It's not buildable up there.
The whole lot's buildable, but there's
no road.
They'd like their house down there in the corner. That if this ever gets developed, it would be further, I guess.
But aside from their preference, is there a road access you could get in up there, or not really?
Where?
Into the RO portion?
No, I'll only said no. I mean, the RO portion of the property is not substantial enough to even,
it's only,
allow them to do that there. If they were to try to subdivide that off, it would create other issues, so, yeah.
I'm not sure why it crossed the line, but that's how they drew it. It's only a little triangle.
Yeah.
If you can see, yeah, you can see.
It's probably a stupid question, but not. Never having laid a foundation before, I thought I'd ask it.
I'm not oriented north and south, but who's the abutter at the top of the photo? Where Craig's got the cursor in.
To the, that side?
Yeah, can you see, Craig, you were just...
Reed Stevens is,
Yeah, it's a vacant lot
It's a
there.
vacant lot. And those, it looks like lots across the street from there, are they subdivided for, again, to the, yeah, those,
Yeah,
there's
those
all
are
open space, or?
our existing lots of record, actually. I think there's, an existing home on that lot. This is Concord Union School District property over here that abuts the Millbrook school sites over here. And remember, this is also the 2010 aerial. It doesn't show the extended development of the school district there. There we go, that's the 2015.
Any further questions of the applicant? Do you have anything else you wish to add?
no, I'm good.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the application? Craig?
Nothing more to add at this point.
Okay. With that, I'll declare the hearing closed.
I guess just for discussion purposes, I have a hard time with this. I understand it would be a financial hardship to extend services that distance, 2,300 feet. I understand why the zoning's the way it is, because that is how you base lot sizing. It's based on water and sewer, well and septic, whichever one you do. Someone can always do a larger lot. They don't have to do the minimum. My concern with this is that I can see down the road nice frontage lots down the whole road of everybody. Every time they come, they want to do a new lot to sell off, but they're going to come ask for a variance. And if we grant this one, how can you not grant the next one until you're all the way down to where sewer and water are, but all these new houses are in with well and septic systems? If the land was undevelopable, if there was wetlands or slopes or easements or something, that's why this house is in the furthest corner, then it would be a lot easier for me to support this variance. But as it stands now, I understand the financial hardship, but I also know that if the water and sewer is extended, the land becomes more valuable. If there is further development later on, the lines are there, the applicant can recoup their costs because it's their land, that they could then require a tie-in, or they're the developer, or they can build that in. But I do understand that it is a hardship now. I'm very torn and looking to see what my fellow board members feel about
I'm inclined
that.
to support the variance now because, I mean, this is what we're being asked to vote on. I mean, if they want to subdivide it in the future, well, we'll have to deal with it later, but it is it's a tremendous hardship to try to bring something 2,300 feet, so.
Well, except for that, they could right now divide the whole thing, and then it wouldn't be a hardship.
But they don't want to do that.
They don't want to do that.
What we're being asked to do.
They just don't want to do that.
Right.
But it sort of seems like the zone is pushing not the right word, the zone is designed for a higher density.
Someday,
Yeah.
maybe that'll happen, but at this point, we're being asked to deal with this.
Isn't it a self-imposed hardship, though, because they want to put the lot in the furthest possible corner,
I
as
mean,
opposed to...
It's their land, I mean.
I know, I completely understand that, and that's why I said if it was, the rest of it was undevelopable, or slope, or
Yeah.
wetland, or easements, you're right, that is the best place for it, the only place for it, But as the applicant stated, it's because that's where they want to do it, because of potential
I mean,
further development.
We could say, we could put a condition on it that if sewer and waters run down the road, they have to tie in.
I think you can only do that if it's in failure. If someone has usually if
Yeah, I don't
someone
know
has
that.
an active well and septic system, you can't make them abandon what they already have.
Okay, so.
But
Or could we put a condition that if it's further subdivided, that at that point, any further subdivision will require sewage and water?
Be back here.
they'd be back here anyway for a variance, so, and if the next board grants it, you can't tell the next board they can't grant it. The zoning already tells them they're supposed to
But
do it.
each time,
Yeah.
I would imagine the land comes up, you know, Craig or whomever is in charge would say, well, it's been here for a variance of similar nature,
When Craig's here the next time.
or whomever.
Oh, yeah. I know.
I mean, presumably it won't happen that soon, because if they're gonna do that, they would just do it and
Get it done.
it would be a lot, they'd save more money that way to then tie in, right?
Well, I'm concerned of the unintended consequence that if in fact they do have to extend it, then it will just invite them for economic reasons to divide the property up more and create a more densely, you know, in a zone where I think we're struggling to have open space and less density. We're almost inviting it by requiring.
But that's what it allows.
Actually, I just want to ask a point of clarification of the applicant, if I may. Is any portion of this property under current use?
I think it is.
They just take it out.
You could just take it out.
Yeah, I know,
mean,
but-
it's not, that's not a permanent,
Okay.
that's not a permanent.
It's just,
I would
is
hope,
it-
I would hope so for their financial benefit that they have it in current use.
I don't have the complete application.
Oh.
Let me read the hardship again.
Their description of hardship is largely.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That it'd be too expensive for them to tie in.
Yes, I mean, I think, I have to agree. I can't even imagine what 2,300 lineal feet of
A lot.
water and sewer would cost. And repave the road, I mean, and then you'd have to probably bring underground utilities in, I mean,
But if they put in as many lots as they could according to the density, then it'd spread that cost over all of them. It would definitely.
yeah, I
make it
mean, they
more
could probably
effective.
put in, I mean, half-acre lots, 14, 25 lots.
You're like, whoa.
And again, I'm not advocating for them to fully develop the lot. I go back to the point of it's the hardship and the length, the 2,300 feet, is because they're in the furthest part of the lot. They could be much closer.
They could.
And their argument could be, we tried to mitigate it. We're as close as we could be, we're as close as in the corner that we could be. And I'd be much more inclined to support that because they did their best to mitigate the nonconformity.
Craig, didn't we have a similar case where somebody requested not to have extension of sewer and water within the last year or so?
well, it was several years ago, and it was over on Portsmouth Street across from the Forest Society, the Society
Yes,
for
I remember
Preservation
that
of
case.
Invasive Forests. Their issue was they were gonna have to pull cross-country off of East Side Drive, and was a request not to connect to sewer. I believe they did have water available at the site. Those variances were granted. Again, they were larger lots than the standard lot, if I remember correctly, too.
Anybody care to make a motion?
I move to deny.
No, hearing is closed.
I'll second it. And the reason I am, just because reason wasn't given, was my reason for supporting the denial is that the hardship seems to be more self-imposed by the location of the proposed new lot is the furthest point of way from the connection sites to water and sewer.
All right. Any other discussion?
Just, I'm going to support the motion to deny because I just don't think there's enough in front of us on the record tonight to support the hardship.
All right. All those in favor to deny the request?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Motion is denied, 3-2.
That was Rob and
Me.
Thank you.
Our third case tonight is 46-18 Eric, Justin, and Jen Stevens for Harold Lassonde. It's recess case from July 11th. Applicant wishes to establish a commercial indoor recreational facility, use C-3, and request a variance to Article 28-2-4J, the table of principal use, to permit said use in a district where such use is not allowed for property located at 63 Bog Road in an RO residential open space district.
What's the number? I'm sorry.
46-18.
46-18, it should have been the
4786.
46. And those two, make sure Nick gets those two letters on the front there.
Okay, we'll do that last.
There's a new info there.
On this
Yeah, the
case.
applicant just passed it out.
Okay, everybody get that?
Yes. I assume this is new, this wasn't what was in the packet before?
It's a different packet than you got last
We were
time.
asking, they were going to come back and do
Okay,
it.
I just wanted to make sure.
There is some stuff.
When do we get all our information? Then I'll swear you in.
I guess there's one of each of these. Nick, I'm not doing your job very well.
That's all right. We'll have summer
All
school.
right,
We'll have
hold
summer
on.
school.
Hold on, wait a minute.
And there's 2 letters, I think, that
Yeah,
I
there's-
need to look at.
Stuff's getting attached to the back of things. Because I already have the back.
That looks like a,
Another packet.
So what do I keep?
I don't know. I had mine from.
I think I might have handed you our business plan by accident.
and this goes with one of those packets. I'm sorry, we probably should maybe better use the
So
paper upstairs.
There you go.
So this was the tie vote with,
Can we maybe take a 5-minute recess to assemble our paperwork and read,
Sorry.
read the new material, just so that we don't try to
You want
read
to
the
come up here
stuff
and
that
help
you're
us sort
giving
this
us?
out?
So, yes.
And then
well-
I'll swear you in a minute, yeah.
Well, I was wondering if I could have a 5-minute, so I can actually read this
Yes,
before
all
they
right.
start talking.
Right.
So, because they
You
just,
hear me?
We have
they
folks
just
who haven't
handed
heard the
this
case.
out.
Multiple copies, has everybody gotten it already?
Yes, everyone has that already, except did you need that back? Because you may have given a,
Laura, that's what we're going to read.
Okay.
We just wanted to give it to you.
I wanted to read it, I can't do both at the same time. I just wanted to be able to read it first. So, thank you. Just a couple minutes to read.
Okay, so in addition to that material, sorry to interrupt your reading, there would be the application, there's a
Pictures, yes.
color brochure, a
And then a letter.
purchase and sale agreement that some people got.
Yes.
And this is,
I think that's the no, that's just copies of the
Copies of a
that
letter of
was
support.
received from the owner of the property today.
okay, I don't think members have received that.
All right, so I think you guys need. I need that.
copy.
Okay. Do you have this?
Yeah, I do have it.
Okay. You good?
So can
Thank
I
you.
wasn't here at the last meeting, just before we swear him in, the procedure where we're at, this failed, previous meeting, there was not a majority for any,
Either motion, both motions failed, either to approve or to
so it was
deny.
recessed until tonight.
Recessed, and now so we're getting new information.
So are we presumed that everything for the last hearing is already on the record, or is this a
I think
fresh slate,
because there's
everything
two new members on this one, we should probably
So
start over
so
again.
everything has to be restated as if it was,
I think that would be healthy to
never
do that.
happened. Okay.
Yeah, I did include minutes from the last meeting in the packets I handed out tonight, but yes, because there are two new members sitting, did not sit previously, it would be appropriate to recap all the basic information.
All right, so first of all, we need a motion to,
Come out of recess?
Yep.
I move that we come out of recess.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now I can swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Yes, I do.
State your names as you testify.
Good evening, I'm Eric Stevens. Thank you for your time. Sorry for the confusion with the paperwork. We were trying to simplify things, not inundate you, but it didn't really pan out. So we currently have a signed purchase and sales agreement subject to the approval of this variance to the land use for an indoor-outdoor wedding venue. The property is a 33.7 acre parcel of land with frontage on Bog Road that's zoned RM, and the majority of the lot is zoned RO to the rear. The proposed use is a privately owned, low-impact, indoor-outdoor recreational facility to provide for rustic wedding ceremonies and receptions. We've been searching for a property for this type of project for nearly 2 years now, and all candidate properties we found have been located in rural zones, as these are the only areas that provide the required setting for a rustic venue. The barn we're proposing to build is going to be 84 by 60 feet, prefabricated, on a concrete slab for the purpose of hosting these rustic wedding ceremonies and receptions for up to 180 guests. The exterior appearance of the barn is very similar to what you would find at an equestrian facility, except with more refined finishes. The site plan you have, which is the engineering, it kind of folds out. 17, that one right there. So that is a conceptual site plan, and we're working with a local engineering firm to develop the master site plan after this variance is granted, should it be granted. As depicted on that site plan, we plan to position the barn on the southwest corner of the property, more than 1,100 feet from the closest residence in order to eliminate any potential impacts. In addition, we do not intend to remove any brush or trees from the edge of our property, which will help preserve the privacy of the lot and insulate it from disturbing any neighbors. Improvements will be made to the driveway to increase the width from approximately 20 feet to 24 feet, which will make it more easily accessible for emergency vehicles. And in terms of the proposed usage, we understand that our specific use is not listed in Table 28-24J, the Table of Principal Uses. We also understand that indoor recreational facilities such as this are not included in the recently adopted Outdoor Recreational Facilities Ordinance, which is why we're seeking a variance. When a zoning ordinance does not provide for particular use, that is the reason why the variance option exists, and our proposed use on this unique parcel of land satisfies all of the variance criteria.
My name is Justin Stevens. The first variance criteria we'd like to address is unnecessary hardship. When we're analyzing that, the question is not whether the property can accommodate other uses which meet the zoning requirements. Under RSA 674-33, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property which distinguish it from other properties in the area, A, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provision of the property, and B, the proposed use is reasonable. We know you're all aware of this, we're just repeating it. The property does have many special conditions, which distinguish it from others in the area. The first of which, it's more than 15 times larger than any of the adjacent properties on Bog Road. It backs up to another lot, and that portion of the lot is actually inaccessible because of the wetlands which surround the property. It has a unique shape with a relatively small frontage on Bog Road compared to the size of the overall lot. In there's a wetland delineation study which we had done, and you'll see on there that there are significant areas of wetlands, primarily on other parts of the property which we don't plan to develop. The cleared portion of the lot is already serviced by a 1,200-foot-long driveway which already exists, and the weddings themselves will take part on the far side of the property, like my brother mentioned. The property is bisected almost right down the middle by a rail trail, which limits what you could use the property for. And then the perimeter of the lot is almost completely wooded with mature trees and brush, which provides a great natural, visual, and sound barrier. And we don't plan to touch any of those trees on the perimeter of the lot. Given those special conditions which I just mentioned, especially the large size and setback, the general purposes of the zoning ordinance would not be served by strictly applying the ordinance to this property. Our proposed use is consistent with the purposes stated in section 28(1-5) of the zoning ordinance. Subparagraph A, protect and promote the aesthetics, convenience, and quality of life. B, control nuisance producing uses of land. D, avoid undue concentration of population and prevent overcrowding of land. F, conserve natural beauty and open space. And G, provide for the elimination of those uses which adversely affect the character of the property. And then finally, I, promote sustainable economic development and tax-based expansion. Our rustic wedding venue is compatible with the abutting properties. It's compatible with the uses in the residential area. Neighbors support us. The unique characteristics of the property help protect the neighbors, and strictly applying the ordinance to this property would not help anyone. The statute also requires that the proposed use be reasonable. We feel it's reasonable because there's a growing demand for rustic wedding venues. The site itself is actually rustic, unlike many zones which allow this type of use. A rustic wedding venue is non-intrusive and low impact. And we have support from our neighbors. We met about a dozen neighbors. We walked around and talked to the neighbors and let them know what we were trying to do. Every single person we spoke to supported it. So we feel that denying this reasonable use for this particular property would result in unnecessary hardship for us. And once again, the analysis of the standard is not whether the property could be used for other purposes which are allowed by the zoning.
The next variance standards are public interest and spirit of the ordinance. The New Hampshire Supreme Court has determined that these two standards are related and should be considered together. The Supreme Court has also said that the basic question for both of these standards is whether the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. From a visual perspective, the appearance of the barn fits the physical form and character of the neighborhood. No neighbor will be able to see the wedding events or the parking lot. We'll need minimal signage because of this kind of business. It does not depend on drive-by business. And other than a sign, neighbors will only see cars coming and going, but the traffic will be minimal.
When we were analyzing the traffic, we looked at multiple traffic impact studies around the country for wedding venues. Traffic engineers typically use 75% of the maximum capacity to determine how many guests are there. So we, as Eric mentioned, we anticipate 180 guests. 75% of that will get you to 135 guests. Traffic engineers also use an average of 2.5 guests per vehicle, and that's because many families travel together, and the wedding party usually comes in a bus or limousine, not always, but typically. So if you take 135 guests total, 2.5 guests per vehicle, that will get you to 54 vehicles per wedding. Now, the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission data shows that in June of last year, in 2017, an average of 2,892 vehicles traveled on Bog Road every day. So then if we take our 54 vehicles per wedding, arriving and departing for 2 weddings per week, which is more than double what we anticipate hosting, just so you're aware, that would be 216 vehicle trips per week, which is approximately 1% increase per week, 1.06. Additionally, we only plan to host weddings a couple days a week, so there's 5 days a week that won't have any traffic impact at all. and peak traffic volumes for weddings are typically spread out across many hours. The wedding party families and vendors typically arrive early, and some guests leave immediately after the ceremony, and others stay till the end of the reception. Also, wedding ceremonies and receptions are typically held on afternoons and evenings, so they're not going to affect local residents' working commutes.
As far as a noise perspective, the weddings will be at least 1,100 feet from any residence, making it unlikely that neighbors will hear anything. All the music, as far as DJs and bands, will be played within the barn, which is going to be fully insulated, so we do not anticipate any, and we don't anticipate keeping the doors open because the barn will be air conditioned or heated. So no outside noise should be minimal. The only outdoor music would be background music for ceremonies, which is typically quiet. On Monday, July 9th, we played a speaker on the property near where we intend to position the barn. We set the volume to approximately 100 decibels, and the noise was not audible from the bike path on the property. So we're fully confident that virtually no noise will be audible by the abutters. So ultimately, from a noise, traffic, and visual standpoint, this venue will not alter the existing character of the neighborhood, and it is consistent with the spirit and intent of the ordinance.
All right, the next analysis of whether a variance would result in substantial justice. The New Hampshire Supreme Court ruled in 2007 that the only guiding rule in this standard is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. If you deny this variance, there would be no gain to the general public. There will, however, be a loss to us. In the substantial justice analysis, if the public will not gain by denial and there will be a loss to the applicant, then the board must conclude that a denial would result in an injustice. And the public will benefit from granting this variance because the venue itself will support local businesses such as wedding planners, caterers, cleaners, florists, photographers, waiters, musicians, bakeries, and landscapers. The wedding parties and guests will likely stay at local hotels, bed and breakfasts, and they will eat at local restaurants and shop downtown. The venue itself will increase the tax base. There's also demand for these rustic wedding venues, especially ones that are close to Concord, and this unique property provides an opportunity to provide for such a convenient venue. Also, the venue could be used as a community asset for a place of assembly for neighborhood groups and also for fundraisers, and we'd be open to that. In analyzing the substantial justice standard, courts have also considered whether the proposed development is consistent with the area's present use. Our proposed wedding venue is consistent with the area's use as it will not significantly impact traffic patterns, it will not be seen from the road except for minimal and area-appropriate signage, and it will not be seen or heard from either surrounding streets or any residents.
The final variance standard is the impact on the value of surrounding properties. The value of surrounding properties will not be diminished. As we discussed, noise, traffic, and visual aesthetics will not affect the neighborhood. Most days of the week, there will not be any events. The fact that the neighbors support us demonstrates that we will not harm property values. There's nothing to suggest that the property values will be diminished. We thank you for your time and allowing us to come back and represent this. And we all believe firmly that we satisfy all of the variance criteria.
Questions from members of the board?
Can you orient me a little bit about where in Barbaro this is? Is it closer to Fisherville Road or closer to Carter Hill?
Closer to Fisherville.
Okay.
Fisherville would be right along here. This is the...
Looks like they're gonna bring the sewer and water in, so it's right down where the condos are.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the more recent Cabernet Sonoma Drive development there. That's a manufactured housing park. Manufactured housing park. These are all single-family residential dwellings here.
So your plan is to bring sewer and water out to the barn?
We're hoping to. We're going to work with the civil engineering firm to figure out what's going to be the most viable and effective way to handle that. We are an RO to the rear here, so I don't know that we necessarily are required to bring it out, even though there is frontage, that very small part. It would be about 1,100 feet, so we're just trying to make sure we have the least impact on the wetlands along that road as well. But
So has anybody done any, like looked at what's out in the road, the depth, and done any calculations to see if it'll even work?
In terms of the slope and everything like that, they said it looked pretty flat. So they said it might possibly require pump housing or something of that nature.
The
Vineyards, they had to raise the grade incredibly.
The environmental scientist who did our wetland delineation study happens to be a septic designer.
Yeah,
Just-
but
Yeah, so we haven't, no, at this point, we're just trying to get the use variance, and then we'll have to come back if we decide to try to do something differently, from our understanding.
And you said the closest residence is 1,100 feet. Is that the manufactured housing, or is that?
if you don't mind, I'll get up here and point.
Yeah,
it.
please.
Why don't you go up and show us?
So we're looking to site it approximately right here in this area. And if you drew a circle at 1,100 feet, you'll see it encroaches on these properties at 1,100 feet, but it doesn't touch any of the buildings at 1,100 feet. So there's quite a significant setback. And I think we're at, 1,200 feet over here towards the manufactured housing.
Okay, I think you can draw a line with this, actually.
There's a reason they call it Bog Road.
Yeah, we found out when we did the
Surprised how many
wetlands.
times you've heard that.
Other questions from members of the board?
The, and maybe this is a correct question. I'm not seeing Fisherville Road here, but where is the?
I zoomed in a little
Fisherville's
bit.
that
Yeah,
way.
okay.
So the intersection of Bog Road and Fisherville is right here. That's the old restaurant and hotel.
So
on that
commercial
corner.
activity continues how far down?
This is all residential. That's as far as the,
Okay.
that's a
That's
C,
the zone,
that's a
okay.
CG zone there. Everything else here is residential, high density, medium, residential open space.
Other questions? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward.
Hey, Nick, when you have some letters, I have the file has.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Please state your name as you testify.
My name is Raymond Mercier. I sent you a letter before, but I'd like to be able to say a little more on it.
What's your address, Mr. Mercier?
My address is 81 Bog Road. Right, I own and live on that property. I abut the property of 63 Bog Road on its northern border. And I'm here to express my support for granting a zoning variance to the property on 63 Bog Road for the construction and operation of a business hosting rustic wedding ceremonies and receptions. I believe there exist special conditions of the land that distinguish this property from other properties in the open space residential district, and these conditions impose more of a burden on this property than on other adjacent properties. I have lived on Bog Road for 7 years, and in that time I have witnessed the construction of 4 new houses and the total rehabilitation of 3 other homes on Bog Road. There is obviously a strong demand for residential housing in this area. Yet despite this demand, the property on 63 Bog Road has been for sale for years. Why is this? Well, the north side of the property consists of wetland that would require a driveway of about 1,000 feet. This by itself makes the property unsuitable for residential housing. In addition to the wetland, it is my understanding that the City of Concord maintains a right-of-way through the center of the property on the old railway bed. The location of the right-of-way effectively cuts the land into 2 parcels. The development of house lots is further impeded by that right-of-way. I feel the proposed use of the property as a rustic wedding ceremony and reception business is not contrary to the public interest and meets the spirit of the open space residential district guidelines. I also feel the proposed use would in no way diminish the value of the surrounding property. It is my opinion that the special conditions of the property rise to the level of granting a variance, and that granting a variance grants substantial justice would be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? We do have your letter, so
Yes,
thank you very
that's
much.
previous letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? Please come forward.
I do.
Is Sorry, I was just trying to
Get
do the next
real
one.
quick. Go tell the truth. Go tell the truth. I do.
Please state your name.
Andrew Tarani. I live at 67. Probably the house is 1,000 feet or 1,100 feet off of them. I built or renovated a house there 2 years ago, and compared to the manufactured housing that's down the street, I find this is a valuable and a great alternative. If you look at their plan, which is on this, you'll see they're not cutting any trees. The boundary between them and us is huge. It's great. Again, I think we've all been watching this property go for sale. All the neighbors have been wondering when the manufactured housing is going to move up in there, and that, of course, would really radically affect our houses. The houses that have gone up on that road are all single-family, good quality houses, and this will not affect the property values at all. And these kids have literally gone up and down the street and addressed all of our problems, all of our questions. You know, I talked to them about lighting, minimal lighting. I talked to them about noise. My grandkids made more noise than they're making. So, you know, this is really, I think, a benefit to the neighborhood and a real good use of the property there. And again, it's a tough property. You can see that by the amount of time it's been on the market. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the application? All right, I do have 2 letters. One is from Harold and Lynn Lassonde, who have owned 63 Bog Road since the 60s. We've had the property on the market for 3 years, and prior to the Stevens, we've only been approached by 2 developers that wanted to see how many 1/4 acre building lots they could get out of the property and wanted to pay us for per a building lot. First, this would be a challenge because of some areas of wetland, and second, it would be a huge impact to the West Concord area. We would like to have the property stay intact if possible. And I have a letter here from Kathy White, 124 Bog Road, who speaks in opposition to the request. I don't think you have a copy of the letter, but I'll have a copy. No. She is concerned about the long-term effects of granting this variance. First, she feels that once a commercial venue has been placed on the property, there will be no going back to fully designated RM/RO zoning, as the precedent will have been set and the buildings will have been constructed. I recall the zoning administrator mentioned recent changes to allowable uses within the districts, and I'm sure these decisions were made to protect these areas and that these decisions are not met lightly. While this land would likely work well for the proposed purpose, what happens if it does not, or the Stevens decide to sell in a few years? What happens then? Second, it was shared that there would be an outdoor public address system for wedding ceremonies. Mr. Stevens admitted that they would eventually like to expand their business to include other uses during the week. How would a PA system be used? I can sit outside my home on a Friday evening in the fall and listen to the Merrimack Valley High School football game PA system, which is several miles away. Lastly, traffic numbers were given in relation to wedding guests and their arrival and departure times. So she has concern about the traffic patterns. Craig.
I do have a couple comments. One that was just brought up is a concern that manufactured housing parks could expand into this area. No, this is an RO zone. That type of high-density development would not be permitted at all in the RO zone at this time, so that is not a concern. For that matter, within the RO zone, it is a 2-acre minimum for a building lot. So you're talking 1 unit per 2 acres of buildable land. Good portion of this property is probably in the RO zone. And in order to do that too, you'd also have to be able to provide 200 feet of frontage on an accepted city street or do a cluster type development. We talk about segregation of uses. Again, they call it a wedding venue, but it is a commercial indoor recreational facility. It would not necessarily be restricted to weddings. There are many other activities there, corporate retreats, parties, anniversaries, anything of that nature would still fall within that category. So it's not just a wedding venue. So.
I have a question for Craig. So Camp Spalding is a little bit further down Bog Road in the Arrow Zone, and they have a large building there that they rent out for weddings and stuff like that. How is that different than what they're proposing?
They're pre-existing use. It is mainly a youth camp. They were established.
Camp Spalding, that building that's there now was put up there like 20 years ago.
Right. They were established long before this ordinance went into place. In fact, the original Camp Spalding goes back to, I'm not sure what year, probably the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but I'm saying the most recent, where it comes in off of Bog Road, there's a large building that's not very old up there.
Yeah. Again, I don't know the history of that, Rob. I'd have to.
No, just curious how it.
Yeah, whether it was established by variance or under the prior ordinance under a different thing. But again, under the current ordinance, or what we have just done though too, is we have created the use of outdoor recreational facilities. With that type of a use, we recognize that there are buildings or properties that have existing buildings. We allowed those existing buildings to be incorporated into this recreational outdoor facility. Again, it was intentional to prevent additional commercial buildings being built in the RO or the RM open space areas. Again, it was specifically to address the issues for our existing agricultural lands, farms, and things of that nature, to be able to better utilize their land and expand their uses. So Applecrest or Sunnycrest Farms would be able to legitimately do some of the things that they've been doing for years.
So I have a question that arose after I listened to one of the folks in favor of it, so I'll ask it. I don't know if it's you, Craig, if you can help, or maybe it's the applicant, but are there portions of the lot that are not suitable for building a single-family home because it's wet or the terrain is challenging? I think what somebody said is you'd have to build a 1,000-foot driveway to get to a buildable lot space. Is that? And no, that's not the applicant. It came from one of the folks that testified.
Well, again, there is potentially a considerable amount of wetlands. I believe in the packet there they have some wetland delineation on there. To develop it for single-family dwellings, yes, you'd have to be able to develop on quote-unquote buildable land, dry land, short of getting special dredge and fill permits through the state.
And they would still be able to satisfy the frontage, even if they build thousands of feet back?
Oh, yeah. As long as you have the minimum, actually, well, for the RM district, it's without, well, there is sewer, so it would be 100 feet of frontage. But again, you can do a cluster-type development, too, where you bring in a road, and you don't have to have the individual frontage on Bog Road for those individual lots.
I was unsure from reading the minutes, from the testimony, if that's something that's appropriate as a consideration for me or the board, which is, well, you could do something else with it. Is there something else with it that's not in front of us?
Well, the theory behind zoning variances is it's a pressure release valve to protect the constitutional rights of use and enjoyment of property. And part of the purpose of the variance is, or criteria for the variance, is to demonstrate that because of existing conditions and restrictions of the property, that it can't be used for another reasonable purpose otherwise permitted in the zoning district. Reasonable use does not necessarily mean the highest and best and most profitable use. So if they are prevented and not able to use it, then yes, it is justifiable to grant the variance.
I can say from the last meeting, my concern, it was brought up by a couple people, applicant as well as I think some of the abutters, about not wanting some of the allowed uses. This was better because of density or kids or development, and I know that I said that's not my consideration, that this may not have kids or may not have houses. I will say that, and it was captured a little bit in the minutes, is that the applicant previously had presented mostly about why it was a hardship for them to try and find another piece of land, as opposed to why the land had hardship. Thank you for bringing more information about the land, because that's what I was struggling with last time, was that the land, the argument about why the land was unique or there was a hardship with the land was not presented effectively, in my opinion, till tonight. The wetlands mapping helped, and the fact that this is such a high-level wetlands mapping means that this is just a small percentage of the actual wetlands on the site, because they did not do an on-the-ground wetland survey. They did this from aerial mapping and from other stuff, I would guess, because they'd find more wetlands if they were, probably some more wetlands on the ground if they were doing more work. So I was just going to say that, again, the use, and to Craig's point, it can be other uses besides weddings. So if you get the variance, I probably wouldn't keep limiting yourself to that, because the planning board may catch that and say you can only do weddings on weekends and you want your business to thrive.
I'm still getting comments from Craig.
Oh, I'm sorry, Craig. Did I totally
I was complete.
So would the Stevens like to offer factual rebuttal to the letter that we had? Please come forward.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say, we, from looking at our business plan, we just factually, our business plan states 95% of our events will be weddings. We don't plan to offer any corporate retreats. We do corporate gatherings, so maybe a dinner inside the barn, nothing outside the barn. Can I address the wetland study?
Sure, I'd like to learn more about it.
What was that?
So any, Craig? Although we're really dealing with rebuttal issues right now.
Well, it came up in the testimony from the gentleman about the driveway would have 8,000
Board
feet
is
long.
interested in additional information, that's acceptable.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the wetland study was done in person. Laura, what happened, so the entire, both sides of the driveway are wet. He basically said, if you need me to do a full in-depth wetland delineation, it's gonna cost close to $10,000 because of the size of the lot. So we wanted to restrict it to less, so that's why it's not as detailed as you would.
No, I understand that. It says it's not field located, which means when they do that, you will find more wetlands than this. So that was my saying, that the fact that there's this much from not doing it,
It is.
with a stamped and,
Yeah, he spent about 2 days on site.
Oh, yeah.
So
I understand that, so.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, with that, I'll declare the hearing closed. Now we can have a discussion.
Sorry, I jumped the gun on the discussion. So. And again, I was the one last time, I believe, that made the motion to deny the request, and my concerns were that it seemed to be more about the applicant's ability to find land, and that was the hardship, and that doing this would be quote unquote better by not providing housing on this land or another more intense use, as opposed to what I felt needed to be there as an argument about why the land had hardship and this was the best use for the land. And after getting the information tonight, which is what I had hoped they would bring back, I do see that there is hardship on the land, and there are other circumstances that this, I feel justifies a variance because of that information. So thank you again for bringing that back.
Would you like to make
So
a
you think
motion?
it's the wetland?
Well, no, I think it's the wetlands, and I also think it was the argument that they made in their paperwork about how the land met the variance criteria.
Right.
Their last material was really about their use, how they wanted to use it, and why they couldn't find anything else versus why this was a good use for this particular piece of land.
I think it's very wet, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's broken up by the railroad bed, so it's a unique piece of property for sure.
Yes. And that just wasn't presented as clearly last time as it was tonight. So with that, I will make a motion to grant the variance.
I second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
There's just
5 to nothing.
paper back.
And then there's a plethora of paperwork that we're going to collect.
There is
All
a
in
plethora
favor, good
of
luck with that.
paperwork.
Trying to
Plethora.
put all this back together. Is there more paperwork going back?
Yes, I'm trying.
Down to two.
All right, our final case tonight is case 49-18. Carol S. Cantwell. Applicant wishes to construct a 6-foot by 26-foot porch on the front of a two-family dwelling and requests the following. 1, a variance to Article 2841H, the table of dimensional regulations to allow the construction of a front porch with a front setback ranging from a minimum of 4 feet plus or minus to 10.7 feet where front setback of 25 feet is required. And 2, variance to Article 2841H, the table of dimensional regulations to allow a side setback of none less than 13.7 feet from the southerly side property line and not less than 8 feet from the northerly property line where a side setback of 15 feet is required for property located at 109 and 111 Liberty Street in an RS residential single-family district. Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. State your name as you testify.
Good morning, or good morning. Good morning, Your Honor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Eugene Sullivan. I'm an attorney here in Concord, and I represent the Cantwells. Carol Cantwell is the record owner. Her husband, Michael, lives there with her. The home that's in question was what's known as High Street, now known as Liberty Street. It's located at the top of the hill on White's Park, in the neighborhood I grew up in. The house suffered a fire. I correct my mistake in the application for a variance. I said 2017. It was around February of 18. It was a major fire. As I said, I don't know if I pointed this out. This home has been in Carol's family for 5 generations. So she lost a lot of memories, and they lost everything they owned when the fire hit this house. As you can see from the first attached photograph to the application to a variance, that first and the second photographs are the home as it existed when Google Maps drove down the road, and that's prior to the fire. You can see that this was a two-family residence, and on each side were the entrances to the home. The home was probably built in 1900. All before the zoning ordinances came into existence. And it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. Obviously, the 2 side porches were built within what would be the 15-foot side setbacks today. When the fire occurred during reconstruction, Cantwell's decided to place the entrances on the front of the building. It would still remain a 2-family, but it would have front entrances. And that's the 3rd photograph. And then in the 4th photograph, you'll see what they are proposing. And that's just a farmer's porch on the front of the house, which would provide cover during inclement weather, from the rain, the snow, whatever. It would be set back. I have an artist rendering here.
So is it already built?
No. No, the house, Mr. Harrison, exists as it is right now in the picture. If you drive on, excuse me, I was going to say High Street. If you drive down Liberty Street, you'll see that it's tieback. If I'm using the wrong word, I know, you are a builder. The green stuff.
White stuff. Zip board on it now.
It's a vapor barrier,
Oh, yeah.
pre-made vapor barrier. The 4th photograph shows actually how far that porch would come out. It will be 6 feet. Unfortunately, in the artist's rendering, the artist drew it such that the side of the northern side does not contain that stairway and is built all the way to the side of the house. That is inaccurate. it would be a mirror image on the other side. Setback to the first window lined up architecturally. This is an extremely narrow lot. And if you look at the pictures of the way the home appeared prior to the fire, both the first and the second picture on the north and the south side, they're right on the property line. One abuts the neighboring driveway, the other abuts the Cantwells and their their tenants' driveway, to the point where there is no place to put snow in the winter. When you try and, if you look on the side, you'd have to put it in the neighbor's yard. So it becomes very cumbersome in the winter to remove the snow. I assume you use a snow blower, Mr. Cantwell, and try and blow it all to the back or blow it to the front of the front yard. And by the same token, it causes the same hardship, I believe, to the neighbor, which would have the same inability to place snow to the side of this driveway.
Steps? Yeah, steps on both sides.
And also if you look at the picture with the, I put a stick up I put that 2x4 in that box up at exactly 6 feet. You can see it's consistent with the neighborhood. The porch next door goes out far further, and then another budding house that I just grabbed a picture of, that's the fence and the porch going right out. I don't even know where the right-of-way would be in that photograph, but it's very close to being in it, I would assume.
So the stick that's in the box is the edge of the...
The edge of the box marked 6 feet.
Very creative.
I've graded it out. I measured it out with a tape to 6 feet and took a picture.
Okay.
Going through the standards for a variance, just to set the record, make the record.
We're looking to improve on the house. Like he has said that I'm the 5th generation to own the house. And it's very sentimental to me. My great-grandmother bought it many years ago. And it's been devastating that I've lost everything. I lost 3 cats. I have nothing left. We live at my parents' house down the street, in my old bedroom. And I just wanted to improve how the house looked. And like this weekend, there's a bike race going around White's Park. It would be nice to sit on the porch and watch the bike race. So that I kind of just wanted to improve the looks of the way my grandparents would have liked it.
And again, I'll go through the variance standards. I'm not going to say anything further than what I've written, I don't think, and that is that special conditions, like most lots that were put up prior to zoning, these are small in-town lots, makes possible utilities. And all they're attempting to do is provide cover while they access their homes from the rain, the snow, the elements. The porch is consistent with the neighborhood and will not increase the pre-existing nonconformance because the former nonconformance on the sides is being removed. And if you look at the actual plan, I think that was filed, the civil engineer shows the square footage as being actually greater nonconformance with the side porches. The narrowness of the lot required the previous entrance ways to sit very close to the boundary line. I won't repeat myself. The granting the variance will not be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. This is a pre-existing non-conforming home and lot. The change is more consistent with the neighborhood and improves the appearance of the neighborhood. It's more consistent with the types of porches that you see on the top of High Street and in downtown, those neighborhoods of Concord that were the original city, or mine anyway. The authorization of the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. This is a pre-existing non-conforming use. It will not harm or in any way affect any members of the general public through this minor change in adding a farmer's porch to the front. And finally, it will enhance the beauty of the home and the neighborhood. Thank you. And unless Mr. and Mrs. Cantwell have anything to say, thank you.
Questions of the applicant?
I just, so by eliminating the side porches, we're going to be limited, so net, the encroachment will be less? Is that?
Yeah, I filed a plan I filed 2 copies of a plan, the civil engineer's plan with the application. And I have X'd out where the porches pre-existed.
Right.
And where this porch will be sitting. It looks to me, I did not go out and measure it, Mr. Monahan.
But you're eliminating the 2 side porches, my question.
Yes, they're gone.
Great.
There's only 2 doors, and they're only on the front. I asked the same question. I drove out there, and I said, asked the carpenter, I said, I don't see any doors on the side anymore. The civil engineer has these porches still there. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, no, those are gone. We have a front entrance now. And he also corrected the civil engineer had put the porch in front of the whole house. So I had to take a magic marker and fix the civil engineer's plan.
Okay. Good, everyone good? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.
Just to refresh my memory, and I'm going back a little ways in my mind, but is it Lita Marchand?
That was the house next door with the extended.
Okay, yep.
That was Lena's house, yes. Now it's
I
Greg
couldn't remember
Champagne.
exactly which one she was in, so yeah.
Yeah, Greg Champagne now owns it, which I'm surrounded by champagnes.
The champagnes, yeah.
So I see no one in the audience, so I assume that there won't be anyone speaking for or against the application. So Craig, any comments?
No, I have nothing additional to add at this point.
Great, so I'll declare the hearing closed and open up for discussion and/or motion.
I think it's a good plan. It alleviates nonconformity for the 2 abutting neighbors and the encroachment on the side property. I am very sorry for the loss of your house and all those memories and your pets. That's devastating. I can only imagine what that's like, but I mean, for this plan, again, what they're proposing fits the neighborhood. It's actually probably better for the 2 neighbors on either side by not having the encroachment there. And with that, I'll make a motion to grant the variance.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. So old business, we had Andrew and Laura and myself and Chris at the last zoning meeting, so I need one of you to act on the minutes for me, please.
I did give Rose just a couple small edits, nothing of substance. I think she confused Andrew and I with voting on one spot. I got to vote twice.
So we'll get corrected minutes.
Yeah. So it was just minor edits.
Good
so.
point, though. So we'll assume that we'll get amended minutes, and we can, why don't we vote on those anyway, knowing what corrections are going to be made? So if you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. With that, I'll declare our meeting closed. Till next month. Hour and 45 minutes.